Hey there, welcome. You found your way to a cozy corner of the internet where stories unfold slowly, gently, just enough to let your mind wander and drift. For the next hour, I'll be reading a collection of Reddit stories. Real, raw, sometimes funny, sometimes emotional, but always soothing. There's nothing you need to do right now, no decisions to make, no tasks to finish. Just settle in, close your eyes if you'd like, and let these stories carry you into sleep. Or at least a peaceful state of rest. So take a deep breath and let's begin. Am I the a-hole for asking that a baby infant be removed from the cook line and kitchen in a commercial kitchen during operational hours? Okay, so I, 30 mem, work in a commercial kitchen. I've been in the industry for about 10 years, and I take food safety and cleanliness very seriously. I'm known for being pretty meticulous about maintaining a safe and efficient kitchen environment because, as we all know, one mistake can lead to a disaster. So here's where things get tricky. I'm now wondering if I overstepped or if I was actually in the right. To give you some background, the kitchen I work in is a fast-paced, high-pressure environment. We serve hundreds of meals daily, and we're constantly moving between hot ovens, grills, knives, and prepping ingredients. There's not a lot of room for mistakes, and we have strict protocols about cleanliness and food safety, especially when it comes to cross-contamination and the general cleanliness of the space. A few days ago, my boss, let's call him Dave, had his wife bring their infant, around 6 months old, into the kitchen. Now, this wasn't a rare occurrence. Dave often lets his wife come by the restaurant to say hello, but this time she brought the baby into the kitchen during peak hours. I don't know if she thought it was cute, or if it was just easier for her to have the baby with her. But the infant was placed in a stroller right next to the cook line while we were in the middle of service. At first, I tried to ignore it. I kept doing my work, but the baby was very close to the cooking area, like right by the grills and hot stoves. There was a lot of heat, steam, and frankly, sharp objects everywhere. I was working near the baby at one point and had to move around it several times. I could tell the baby was getting a little fussy and I started to feel uneasy. There's also the matter of cleanliness. The kitchen, while clean, isn't exactly sterile. There are grease splatters, food spills, and a ton of equipment that could potentially be dangerous for a child. After a few more minutes of feeling uncomfortable, I decided to speak up. I asked Dave if it was possible for the baby to be moved out of the kitchen, not just for the sake of safety, but also because of the distractions it was causing. It was hard for me to focus and get my work done with the baby so close to the cook line, and I was genuinely concerned about the risks involved with the baby being in such a dangerous environment. Dave didn't take it well. He got really defensive and told me that I was overreacting. He said that his wife was just trying to get some fresh air and the baby was perfectly safe in the stroller. He argued that he had been bringing the baby into the kitchen for a while and nothing had ever happened. He also mentioned that he thought I was being unreasonable since the baby wasn't doing anything to interfere with the work. Other co-workers also seemed uncomfortable, but didn't speak up. Some thought I was being a little too strict, while others agreed it wasn't ideal, but the tension in the air was palpable, and I felt like the situation was becoming more disruptive by the second. Eventually, Dave told me that he didn't want to hear anything more about it, and that I should just get back to work. I felt like I was in a weird position, but I did as he asked. The rest of the day was a little awkward. I kept wondering if I had overstepped. Was I being too uptight? I really do care about the safety and efficiency of the kitchen, but I also know that some people might feel differently about what's acceptable in a family-owned business. So now I'm asking, am I the a-hole for asking that a baby infant be removed from the cook line and kitchen in a commercial kitchen during operational hours? Am I the a-hole for telling my girlfriend if she's going to just throw what I make away she can cook for herself? Okay, so I, 27 mem, really need some perspective on this because I feel like I'm not in the wrong, but my girlfriend, 26F, is really upset with me, and I'm starting to question if I was too harsh. Here's the situation. My girlfriend and I have been together for about 2 years now, and we live together. For the most part, things are great, but recently, we've had some tension around mealtimes. I love to cook and I take a lot of pride in the meals I make. I usually prepare dinner every night because I enjoy it, and I like making something that I know she'll enjoy too. I've always been pretty conscious about her preferences, and I try to cook things that she likes. But over the last few months, I've noticed a pattern that's been really bothering me. It seems like no matter what I cook, she'll eat a few bites and then throw the rest away. I understand if she's not hungry, or if she doesn't like something, but this happens a lot. Sometimes she won't even give the meal a chance. She'll take a bite, make a face, and then just push it aside. She's even done it when I've spent a couple of hours making something from scratch. I've tried talking to her about it multiple times. I've told her that I don't mind cooking, but it's really hurtful to see all the food get wasted, especially when I put in the effort. I've asked her to let me know beforehand if there's something she really doesn't want, or if she's not in the mood for a particular dish. She agrees, but the next time, it's the same thing. A few days ago, I made this really nice pasta dish with a homemade sauce. I spent the afternoon getting everything just right, and when I put it in front of her, she took a couple of bites, made a face, and then told me it wasn't what she was in the mood for. I tried to stay calm and just asked her if she wanted something else, but she said she wasn't really hungry and didn't feel like eating anymore. This is where I lost it. I told her that if she's going to keep throwing away what I make, then maybe she should just cook for herself. I know it sounds harsh, but I was genuinely frustrated at that point. I told her that I wasn't a short-order cook and that I don't like seeing my effort go to waste. I also said that I felt unappreciated because I was the one putting in all the work while she just rejected it. She got really upset and said that I was being unreasonable and that she didn't mean to hurt my feelings. She said it's not like she's doing it on purpose and that she just doesn't always feel like eating the things I make. She also said that it felt like I was being controlling and that I was trying to guilt-trip her into liking everything I cooked. Now, I feel bad for how I responded, but at the same time, I don't think I was being unreasonable. I really feel like she could be a little more considerate and at least try to communicate better, instead of just rejecting everything I make and wasting food. It feels like a slap in the face every time she does it, and it started to affect how I feel about cooking altogether. So Reddit, am I the a-hole for telling my girlfriend if she's going to just throw what I make away, she can cook for herself? Am I the a-hole for ruining my boyfriend's family dinner by bringing my own food? Okay, so I really need to figure out if I was in the wrong here. I, 25F, have been dating my boyfriend, Jake, 26M, for about a year now. Everything is great between us, and I get along really well with his family. They're all pretty nice and welcoming, but there's a small issue with how they handle meals, and it came to a head last week during a family dinner. To give some context, I have some dietary restrictions due to health issues I've been dealing with. Over the years, I've developed food intolerances that can cause some serious digestive issues if I eat certain foods. I'm super careful about what I eat, and it's not just a matter of being picky. It's genuinely about my health. I've had to cut out things like gluten, dairy, and processed sugars, and while it's been a challenge, I've gotten used to it. The problem is that Jake's family, like a lot of people, doesn't quite get it. They always joke about how complicated my diet is, but I've explained that it's not a choice, it's a necessity. Anyway, Jake invited me to his family's dinner last Friday. He told me that they were making pasta with creamy sauce, garlic bread, and salad. Normally, I would just politely decline or bring a small snack to eat beforehand, but I've been working on trying to feel more included in family gatherings, and I wanted to be part of the fun. So I asked Jake if I could bring my own food. I told him that I could bring a simple dish that I could eat without it affecting my health, something like grilled chicken and roasted veggies. Jake was a little hesitant at first, but I reassured him that I wasn't trying to be difficult. I just needed something safe for me to eat. He said it would be fine and that he'd let his family know, though I got the sense that he didn't want to make a big deal out of it. Fast forward to the dinner itself. When I walked in with my own container of food, his family seemed a little taken aback. His mom, who is super sweet but tends to be a bit old-fashioned, immediately asked me, "Why didn't you just eat what we made?" I explained again about my dietary restrictions and that I had to bring my own food to avoid getting sick. She nodded, but I could tell she wasn't thrilled. As the night went on, things started to get awkward. At first, people tried to engage me in conversation, but it felt like they were treating me like I was being high maintenance. His dad made a couple of passive-aggressive comments about how picky I was being, and his younger brother kept asking me if I really couldn't just have a little bit of the pasta. I politely declined each time, but the more I declined, the more I felt like I was being judged. The real issue, however, came after dinner when I had finished my food and others were still eating. Jake's sister, who I've always had a pretty good relationship with, said, "Well, I guess you don't want to join the rest of us at the table, huh?" in a tone that felt kind of mocking. I tried to laugh it off, but I could tell that there was an underlying frustration with me for not just going along with the meal. As the night progressed, the tension kept building. At one point, Jake's mom took me aside and said, "You know, we would have tried to make something you could eat if you'd just told us beforehand." I explained that I had told Jake multiple times about my restrictions, but it felt like she was brushing me off. She made it seem like I was the one causing the problem by bringing my own food, even though I had tried to be respectful of their meal by not making a fuss and just eating my own thing quietly. When Jake and I left, he apologized for how things went and said his family was kind of weirded out by me bringing my own food. He said it ruined the vibe of the dinner and made everyone uncomfortable. He didn't directly say it was my fault, but I could tell he was frustrated. We had a bit of a disagreement on the way home, with him saying that maybe I could try to eat what they make next time to avoid drama, and me feeling like he didn't fully understand why I had to bring my own food in the first place. Now, I feel terrible. I really didn't want to ruin the night, and I hate that it came across that way, but at the same time I feel like I was being responsible by not risking my health just to avoid a bit of awkwardness. I'm wondering if I was being too sensitive, and that I should have just eaten what they made, or if they should have been more understanding of my dietary restrictions. So, Reddit, am I the a-hole for ruining my boyfriend's family dinner by bringing my own food? Am I the a-hole for not telling my two best friends each other's secrets before they started dating? This is a bit of a mess, and I'm honestly really torn about it. I'm hoping to get some outside perspective because I've been feeling guilty, but at the same time I'm not sure I actually did anything wrong. I, 26F, have two best friends, Sarah, 27F, and Jake, 28M. I've known Sarah since high school, and Jake is someone I met in college. Over the years, we've all become really close, and we've shared a lot of personal stuff with each other, things that most people would consider secrets. We've always had this open, no-judgment kind of friendship, and I've always felt like I could trust them with anything. But now the lines have gotten blurred, and I'm questioning if I should have handled this differently. Here's the situation. A few months ago, Sarah and Jake started showing an interest in each other. It wasn't anything sudden. They'd been friends for a while, and there had always been some chemistry between them, but I never thought they'd actually get together, mostly because they both seemed hesitant about it. Sarah had been hurt by a few bad relationships in the past, and Jake had always kept a pretty low profile when it came to dating, so I figured it was just casual flirting. However, one night, they ended up talking about their feelings, and it turned into something more serious. I was happy for them at first, thinking it was cute and that they were both great people, but then things started to get complicated. Both of them individually had shared some pretty sensitive things with me over the years, things they hadn't told anyone else, not even each other. And when they started dating, I realized I had a big dilemma on my hands. Do I tell each of them about the secrets the other person had shared with me? Let me explain. Sarah had told me years ago that she had a brief but intense fling with a guy from her hometown, which ended badly. It wasn't something she was proud of, and she didn't want anyone to know about it. But she trusted me with that information, and I always respected her privacy about it. On the other hand, Jake had opened up to me a while ago about some insecurities he had surrounding his past relationships and how he had struggled with commitment. He had also confessed that he once cheated on a previous girlfriend, which was a huge deal for him, and he had felt guilty about it ever since. Both of these were major personal things, and neither of them had ever shared them with each other. So when they started dating, I found myself in a really awkward position. I didn't want to be the one to stir the pot or cause unnecessary drama, but I also didn't want one of them to be blindsided later on. I thought about telling Sarah that Jake had struggled with commitment and that he'd cheated in the past. I also considered telling Jake about Sarah's fling. But every time I thought about it, I kept going back to the fact that these were their secrets, not mine, and I didn't want to be the one to expose them. I felt like if they were meant to find out these things, they should do it in their own time and on their own terms. Instead, I decided to just stay out of it. I didn't say anything about Sarah's past to Jake, and I didn't mention Jake's past to Sarah. I figured that they were both adults and had to decide what they wanted to do with their relationship, and I didn't want to interfere. I didn't want to betray their trust by revealing something they hadn't asked me to share. Well, fast forward a couple of months, and things started getting serious between Sarah and Jake. They were talking about moving in together, and I thought they were honestly really happy. But then, out of nowhere, Sarah called me and said that she had found out about Jake's cheating incident. Apparently, he had told her about it after a fight they had, and she was devastated. She felt betrayed, not because of the cheating itself, but because she thought he had been hiding it from her. She said she was really hurt that he didn't trust her enough to tell her, and it made her question everything about their relationship. First, I was shocked that he had told her, but then Sarah dropped the bombshell. She was also upset because she found out that Jake knew about her past fling, and that I had kept it a secret from him. She accused me of being a bad friend for not telling Jake everything. I tried to explain that I didn't want to share things that weren't mine to share, but she didn't seem to get it. She said I should have told him because she would have wanted to know if the roles were reversed. I feel like I'm stuck in the middle of all of this. On one hand, I understand why Sarah feels betrayed about not knowing about Jake's past, and I get why she'd want me to be more open with Jake about her fling. But on the other hand, I really thought it wasn't my place to meddle in their relationship. I didn't think it would be fair to share secrets that they hadn't decided to tell each other yet, especially since I'm not the one who should be the messenger. Now, both Sarah and Jake are mad at me. Jake is angry because he thinks I should have told him about Sarah's fling. And Sarah is upset because she feels like I've betrayed her trust by not sharing Jake's secret. I'm feeling so torn because I really didn't want to cause any drama, but now it feels like I've messed everything up by not speaking up. I've tried apologizing, but it's not really helping. So Reddit, am I the a-hole for not telling my two best friends each other's secrets before they started dating? Am I the a-hole for snapping when someone rubbed my belly and implied I might be pregnant? Okay, so I, 27F, really need some perspective on this because I'm starting to feel like maybe I overreacted, but I'm not entirely sure. This situation has been weighing on me for a couple of days now, and I'm feeling guilty about the way I handled it, but at the same time I feel like I had every right to be upset. To give some context, I've always been very conscious about my body and weight. Over the past couple of years, I've struggled with some personal issues, and one of the outcomes has been some weight gain. It hasn't been easy for me to deal with, and I've been working hard to focus on my health both physically and mentally. I'm still in the process of figuring things out, and it hasn't been easy, but I've made a lot of progress and I'm feeling better about myself overall. Now, the incident in question happened a few days ago at a family gathering. It was a typical get-together, food, drinks, and people catching up. One of my cousins, who I'll call Amy, and I were sitting at the kitchen table talking. We were having a normal conversation about life, work, etc., when she suddenly put her hand on my stomach. I want to clarify that there was absolutely no reason for her to do this. We weren't talking about anything related to pregnancy, babies, or even health. I hadn't said anything that would have suggested I was pregnant, nor had I ever expressed any interest in having kids anytime soon. So when she rubbed my belly, I was caught off guard. But what made it worse was what she said immediately after. She said, "Oh, I think you might be pregnant. You're definitely showing a little, huh?" Now, this is where I'm not sure if I overreacted. I instantly felt my face flush, and I could feel a mix of anger and embarrassment surge through me. It was like everything I've been self-conscious about for the past year came flooding back in one moment. I immediately snapped, "Excuse me, what makes you think it's okay to touch me like that and make assumptions about my body?" Amy looked genuinely surprised and tried to backpedal, saying something like, "Oh no, I didn't mean anything by it. I just thought, well, you've been looking kind of different lately, and I thought you might be expecting." She was laughing awkwardly, clearly trying to smooth things over, but I was so upset that I couldn't even respond calmly. I snapped again, "Don't touch me. And don't ever comment on my body like that, especially if you have no idea what's going on with me." At that point, she seemed embarrassed and apologized, but I was still fuming. I ended up walking away from the table and going outside to cool off. The rest of the day went on without incident, but I couldn't shake the feeling that Amy's comment had really gotten to me. I don't know if she meant any harm by it, but the way she casually assumed something about my body, without even considering my feelings, rubbed me the wrong way. Later, I spoke with my other cousin, Sarah, about it, and she said I was definitely in the right for being upset. She agreed that it was rude of Amy to touch my stomach and make assumptions about my body. But when I talked to my best friend, Megan, about it, she thought I might have overreacted. Megan pointed out that Amy probably didn't mean any harm, and that I should have just laughed it off instead of snapping. She said that it's possible Amy was just being playful, and that I could have handled it more gracefully. I've been replaying the situation in my head over and over again, and I'm still not sure if I handled it the right way. On one hand, I don't think it's okay for anyone to touch me without permission, and the assumption about me possibly being pregnant was incredibly hurtful. On the other hand, I don't want to be someone who overreacts to harmless comments or ruins the mood in a family setting. So Reddit, am I the a-hole for snapping when someone rubbed my belly and implied I might be pregnant? Am I the a-hole for correctly guessing my friend's baby's sex? Okay, so this is a bit of a weird one, and I'm still not sure if I did anything wrong, but my friend, 28F, is really mad at me, and I'm starting to feel guilty about it. Here's what happened. A little background first. I have a friend, Sarah, 28F, who recently found out she was pregnant. We've been friends for years, and she's been pretty open about her pregnancy with me. She and her husband, 29Mem, were super excited, and they made it clear that they weren't planning on finding out the sex of the baby before birth. They told everyone that they wanted it to be a surprise. Now, Sarah and I have always had this playful rivalry. We're really close, but we tease each other a lot and joke around. I've been known to make some wild guesses about things just for fun, especially when it comes to big life events like pregnancies. So, when she told me that she wasn't going to find out the sex of the baby, I jokingly said, "I bet it's a boy." She laughed and said, "We'll see," and didn't think much of it. As time went on, I spent more time with Sarah, and she kept mentioning how she had a gut feeling that the baby was a girl. It was almost like she was manifesting it into existence, and she said it multiple times, like every time we'd talk about the pregnancy. The more she said it, the more I started to get this feeling that it was actually a boy. Not in any profound way, but just based on how she was talking about it. I know it sounds silly, but it felt like she was overcompensating for something. I can't really explain it, but it seemed like she was trying to convince herself it was a girl. Then, about a month ago, we were hanging out, and she made a comment about how she was so sure it was a girl, and I responded, "Are you sure it's not a boy?" She just laughed, and I didn't think much of it. But I still had this weird feeling that it was a boy, and I couldn't shake it. Fast forward to the baby shower. This was a big event, and Sarah had all her friends and family there. It was supposed to be a fun day, and people were already guessing the baby's sex based on things like the shape of her belly, the way she was carrying, and all those old wives' tales. I was just casually talking to her mum, and she made some comment about how she thought it was a boy. At this point, I was almost certain, so I jokingly said, "What if I told you I knew the baby's sex?" Sarah looked at me with a smile and asked me to guess. I, without thinking too much about it, said, "It's a boy, right?" She got really quiet for a moment, and then I noticed her face drop slightly. I couldn't figure out what was going on, but I brushed it off, thinking I was just being funny. Fast forward a little bit, and during the actual reveal, where they had a balloon filled with either pink or blue confetti, it turns out the baby is indeed a boy. Now here's where things got a little tense. After the reveal, Sarah was clearly upset. She didn't really say anything at first, but later in the evening, she pulled me aside and started crying. She said that I had ruined the surprise for her and her husband. She told me that she had really wanted to experience the excitement of finding out the baby's sex when it was revealed, and by guessing it correctly, I had spoiled the moment for them. She even said that I shouldn't have been so confident about my guess and that I made her feel like her intuition was wrong, which made her feel upset and disappointed. I was shocked because I didn't think my guess would have that much impact. It was just a guess. I didn't even mean to spoil the surprise, I just happened to be right. But she seemed genuinely hurt, and I felt terrible about it. I tried to apologize, but she just kept saying I should have kept my guess to myself, and that I shouldn't have been so vocal about it. It really seemed like she was blaming me for something I didn't think was a big deal. Since then, I've been feeling conflicted. On the one hand, I didn't actually spoil the surprise, it was a guess, and I was just playing around. On the other hand, I can understand why Sarah would be upset if she felt like the moment was ruined. I really never intended to hurt her, and I feel terrible that I did. So Reddit, am I the a-hole for correctly guessing my friend's baby's sex? Am I the a-hole for making my sick husband clean up his vomit? I honestly never thought I'd be in a situation like this, but now that I'm looking back, I'm genuinely questioning if I handled it all wrong. This has turned into a big argument between my husband, 30M, and me, 28F, and I'm feeling pretty torn about the whole thing. A little background. My husband and I have been married for about 3 years, and we've been through a lot together. He's the kind of guy who rarely gets sick, so when he does, it's pretty dramatic. This particular instance started when he came home from work feeling a little off, complaining of nausea and some stomach issues. I didn't think much of it. At first because he's had a couple of similar episodes in the past, and it usually passes quickly. The day in question was a bit rough for both of us. I had a long day of work, and we had plans to go out to dinner later in the evening to unwind. He had been laying on the couch all afternoon, and I could tell he wasn't feeling great. After a while, he started to get worse, and I could tell that the nausea was really hitting him hard. He ended up vomiting on the couch. I'm not one to panic in situations like this, but I have to admit, I wasn't prepared for what happened next. It wasn't just a little bit of vomit. It was a lot. It got on the couch, the floor, and the rug. At that point, I was immediately put in the position of deciding what to do. I wanted to help him, but I also knew he was physically able to take care of the situation himself. So I did what I thought was best at the time. I asked him to clean it up. Now, before anyone starts jumping to conclusions, let me explain. He wasn't in a life-threatening situation. He wasn't incapacitated or unable to move. He was still, awake, alert, and functioning. I didn't ask him to clean the entire house. I just asked him to take care of the area around him where the vomit was. He was clearly in distress, but I also didn't think it was fair to put the entire burden on me after my long day as well. I'll admit, I wasn't super sympathetic in the moment, but I was also tired and a bit frustrated. We've been through rough patches, but it's not like he has never helped me when I've been sick. I didn't think it would be too much to ask him to clean up after himself when he was capable of doing so. He immediately got defensive and angry when I asked him to clean up. He told me that I was being inconsiderate and cold-hearted for not helping him right away. He said that I should be taking care of him, especially when he's feeling so sick, and that I was being selfish for expecting him to handle his own mess while he was still feeling nauseous. He argued that he would have done the same for me in a heartbeat, and I should have shown him more care. To be honest, I was taken aback. I didn't realize it would upset him that much. He's usually the one to do things for me when I'm sick, but this time I thought the roles had reversed. After a few minutes of him sitting there sulking, I ended up cleaning it up myself. I figured I'd just get it over with. But now, days later, the argument is still lingering. He hasn't really talked to me about it much, but I can tell that he's still upset. He keeps bringing it up, saying that I was inconsiderate and didn't show him the same level of care he shows me when I'm sick. To be clear, I'm not heartless. I do care for him and want to take care of him when he's unwell, but I just felt like I shouldn't have to clean up after him when he's perfectly capable of doing it himself. I didn't think it would be such a big deal. But now that he's still upset, I'm second-guessing myself. So, Reddit, am I the a-hole for making my sick husband clean up his vomit? Am I the a-hole for refusing to do a DNA test to confirm if my father is the father of another child? So this situation has gotten a little out of hand, and I honestly don't know if I'm in the wrong or if I have every right to be upset. I, 27M, have a pretty typical family life, and I thought I knew who everyone was. But recent events have completely rocked my world. It all started when my mum, 56F, dropped a bombshell on me last week, and I'm still reeling from it. My parents, like most, had their ups and downs, but they've always been together, and I've never really questioned the structure of our family. I have one younger brother, 24M, and everything seemed stable. However, last week my mum sat me down for a serious conversation that completely blindsided me. She told me that there's a possibility that my father, 58M, who I've always known has my dad, might not actually be my biological father. The way she explained it was even more insane. Apparently, when my mum was younger, and my dad and her were going through a rough patch in their marriage, she had an affair with a man who was close to the family. I don't know the exact details, but she told me that this affair happened right around the time I was conceived. My mum went on to tell me that while she had no idea who the other man was at the time, she recently found out that the man she had the affair with had a son of his own, someone in his 20s, and that he was curious if my dad was his biological father. I was completely floored. I had no idea how to process any of this. My mom seemed genuinely upset by the whole situation, but she also told me that this other guy, let's call him Mark, reached out to her, saying that he was starting to look into his own family history and thought there might be a connection between him and my dad. He wanted to get a DNA test to confirm whether my dad was his biological father. At this point, I was in shock, trying to absorb what my mom had just shared. I kept thinking, how could this be true? My dad has been my dad for 27 years, and now all of a sudden, there's this guy claiming that my dad might be his father? It just didn't feel real. And while I can understand that this is something my mom kept hidden for a long time, the way everything came out made me feel blindsided and, honestly, a little betrayed. Here's where things get even more complicated. My mom asked me if I would be willing to do a DNA test to confirm whether my dad is the biological father of this guy, Mark. She explained that Mark had already been in touch with a lawyer to arrange a paternity test, and that if I was willing to take the test, it might provide closure for everyone involved. I was immediately uncomfortable. I'm not sure what I was expecting when my mom brought this up, but I definitely didn't expect her to ask me to potentially put my father through a situation where he might have to face the possibility that he's not the father of someone else's child. I didn't even want to imagine how he would feel if he found out that this guy might be his son. It seemed like such an unnecessary drama to me. I told my mom that I wasn't comfortable with it, and that I didn't think it was my place to get involved in someone else's family drama. I also didn't want to be in a position where I might have to confront my dad with something like this without even knowing how to handle it myself. My mom, however, pushed back. She kept saying that this could be a way to get some closure and that I should consider it as a way of helping Mark understand his own background. She also mentioned that she wasn't sure if my dad would even agree to the test himself, and that it might be easier if I, as his child, were involved to verify the connection. The more she pushed, the more I felt my frustration growing. It wasn't even about my dad being involved at this point. It was the sheer audacity of being asked to take a test that I didn't feel had any relevance to me. I've never met Mark, and I don't know what kind of relationship he has with my mom's ex-lover. It wasn't like he had grown up in my life or had any claim to be a part of our family. The fact that my mom expected me to act as some kind of bridge between him and my dad felt totally out of place. I told her that I wasn't willing to do the DNA test, and that I thought they needed to figure this out without me being involved. That's when my mom got upset. She said I was being selfish, and that I was making a big deal out of something that could potentially bring closure and healing to the situation. She said, "This isn't just about you, you know. This is about your father, me, and our past. You're refusing to help when it could give everyone the answers they need." I was taken aback. I've always considered myself a supportive person, and I've always been there for my family. But this just felt like too much. I didn't feel comfortable being asked to mediate something so deeply personal and potentially painful. I also wasn't sure if I wanted my father to go through that kind of emotional turmoil. And frankly, I didn't even know how to bring it up to him. Things have been tense between me and my mom ever since. She's made it clear that she's disappointed in my decision, And she keeps bringing it up, saying things like, you could help your dad so much by doing this. I don't understand why you're not doing this for him. My dad, of course, has no idea any of this is happening. I haven't told him about the request because I know it would just upset him unnecessarily. But I'm really struggling with this. I don't want to hurt anyone, but I also feel like my boundaries are being ignored. So Reddit, am I the a-hole for refusing to do a DNA test to confirm if my father is the father of another child? Am I the a-hole for playing a voice recording to prove to my friend her daughter isn't nonverbal? This is one of those situations where I honestly don't know if I overstepped or if I was just trying to help, but I feel like I need some outside perspective. I, 30F, have a good friend, Carla, 32F, who has a daughter, Lily, 5. Over the years, I've been there to support Carla through a lot. She's a single mom and has had some tough times raising Lily, especially with Lily's developmental issues. From what I understand, Lily has been diagnosed with speech delays, and when she was younger, it was suspected that she might be nonverbal. Carla had always been very open about it and talked about how much she was struggling to get Lily the right help. Now here's where things get tricky. Over the past year, I've spent a lot of time with Carla and Lily. My husband and I have become close friends with them, and we often hang out or babysit for Carla when she needs a break. I've spent a lot of time with Lily, especially since my husband and I are planning on having kids soon, so I wanted to get some experience with kids. The thing is, while I've seen that Lily sometimes struggles to communicate and has difficulty forming full sentences, I've also noticed that she can speak just fine in certain situations. She has clear conversations with me, says full sentences, and even talks to my husband and me about random things like her favorite cartoons or how she likes her food. But Carla, her mum, continues to insist that Lily is nonverbal or nearly nonverbal. And it has really started to bug me. For example, one day we were at Carla's house and Lily started talking to me about something she had seen on TV. She was very clear and articulate. There was nothing unusual about her speech. But when I brought it up to Carla later, Carla said, "You know, Lily can't really speak. She's basically nonverbal, so don't expect too much from her." I was shocked. I've been around Lily for a long time, and it was clear to me that she can speak just fine when she's in the right environment. The way Carla was talking about Lily made me feel like she was downplaying her daughter's abilities, and I started to wonder why. This went on for a while, whenever I'd have conversations. With Carla, she'd repeat how Lily was nonverbal, or that she was behind in speech. But every time I spent time with Lily, I saw a very different reality. So I started to get a little more concerned. I felt like Carla wasn't acknowledging her daughter's progress, and I couldn't understand why. It was almost like Carla was clinging to the label of nonverbal for Lily, even though it didn't seem to fit the situation anymore. The tipping point came a few weeks ago when we were all out at a park. Lily was playing with some other kids, and at one point she came up to me and said, "Can you push me on the swing higher, please?" It was the clearest request I'd ever heard from her, and it hit me hard. She was perfectly capable of communicating, and she wasn't nonverbal. She might still struggle at times, but she was clearly making progress, and it wasn't being recognized by her mum. Later, when we were talking at the park, Carla mentioned that Lily hadn't been able to make any progress with her speech, and she was still basically nonverbal. I was frustrated at this point. I didn't want to overstep, but I also didn't want Carla to continue to underestimate her daughter's abilities. I felt like I was watching Carla ignore her daughter's potential, and I didn't know how to get through to her. So without thinking too much about it, I did something that I'm now questioning. I took out my phone, and I played the voice recording of Lily asking me to push her higher on the swing. I just wanted to show Carla that Lily was capable of speaking in full sentences. I said, "Carla, listen to this. Lily can speak. She just did." Carla looked shocked when I played the recording. She was quiet for a moment before she said, "I don't know why she would say that to you, but she's not like that all the time." I could tell I'd hurt her feelings. She looked upset, and I immediately regretted my decision to play the recording. I never intended to hurt Carla, but I guess I thought that by showing her, I could help her realize that her daughter wasn't as far behind as she thought. But Carla became really defensive. She said, "You can't just play recordings of her without talking to me first. It's a personal moment and you shouldn't be doing this. I tried to apologize, but it didn't help. Carla was clearly upset with me, and since then, she's been distant. We haven't had any serious conversations since, and I feel like I've damaged our friendship over something that was supposed to be helpful. I've tried to reach out, but she hasn't responded the same way. I feel terrible about it, but I still believe that she's not giving her daughter the credit she deserves. So, Reddit, am I the a-hole for playing a voice recording to prove to my friend her daughter isn't nonverbal? Am I the a-hole for telling my wife that I don't believe her late dad was trained by the British Secret Service as an assassin at 15 years old? I've been married to my wife, Jessica, 31F, for 4 years now, and we've generally had a really good relationship. We have a comfortable life and we're close with both of our families, but recently something happened that's caused a massive rift between us. And to be honest, I still can't tell if I was the one out of line or if she's just being way too sensitive. Before I dive into this, I need to give a little bit of background. Jessica's father, Simon, passed away a few years ago. He was a quiet man from what I could gather, though I never got the chance to know him very well. He wasn't really a big presence in the family. However, every time Jessica talks about him, it's like she's describing someone who could have been in a spy movie. And it's not just some fanciful childhood imagination. She genuinely believes what she says. And that's where the issue started. For context, Jessica has always spoken of her father in very mysterious terms. She would tell me stories about how he was a former spy or worked for the government back in the day. But it was always a little vague. She mentioned how no one really knows what he did, or how he couldn't talk about it because it was top secret. For a while I just let it go, thinking it was just part of her family's eccentricity. But after hearing more and more stories, I began to question whether they were all based on truth, or if they were just embellishments that she believed. The real turning point came when we were talking about her dad's life after his passing. She was sitting at the dinner table one evening, looking very emotional, and told me the most bizarre thing I'd ever heard. She said, "You know, Dad was trained by the British Secret Service as an assassin when he was 15. He was recruited as a teenager and worked in the shadows for years before retiring and moving to the States. That's why he was always so secretive." I couldn't help but blink at her in disbelief. It sounded like something out of a James Bond movie, and it was hard for me to take it seriously. I had heard these spy stories from her before, but this time it was something else entirely. 15 years old, trained by the British Secret Service. That seemed like something someone would make up for dramatic effect. Now I understand that grief does strange things to people. People romanticize or embellish the lives of their loved ones after they pass, and I wasn't necessarily skeptical, because I didn't want to believe her. I just thought that surely there must be some sort of rational explanation for why she believed such an outlandish story. I asked her, "Jessica, are you sure about this? It sounds really far-fetched. A 15-year-old assassin working for the British government." She didn't like the tone of my voice. Her face immediately changed and she looked upset. "What's so hard to believe about it? Why would I lie about something like that?" I responded, "I'm not saying you're lying. I'm just saying that it sounds unbelievable. I've never heard of someone that young being trained as an assassin, let alone for a government organization." She stared at me, her face flushed with frustration. "Why does it matter? It's part of my dad's legacy. If you think he wasn't capable of something like that, then that's on you." I was honestly taken aback. I'd never meant to insult her father or discredit her memories. I just couldn't wrap my head around the idea that a 15-year-old could be a trained killer. In my mind, there had to be more to the story, something missing, some kind of misunderstanding, but the way she was reacting made me second-guess myself. I didn't want to be the one to tear down the memory of her late father, but I also didn't want to just accept such a bizarre claim without a rational explanation. It escalated quickly from there. I said, "I just think that maybe you're romanticizing his past because you want to believe he was this extraordinary figure. But this is too much. It sounds like a story straight out of a spy novel." Jessica's face hardened, and she stood up from the table, obviously upset. "You don't get it. You never understood my father. You never gave him the credit he deserved when he was alive, and now you're questioning everything I've ever told you about him. I don't need you to believe everything I say, but I expect you to respect my memories of him." I tried to calm her down, but she wasn't having it. I realized that no matter how much I explained my perspective, she wasn't going to change her mind. She left the room and we didn't talk for the rest of the evening. The following days were incredibly tense. Jessica was distant, avoiding me when she could. I tried to reach out to her, but every time I brought up her dad or even tried to apologize for my insensitive remark, she shut me down. Eventually, she started accusing me of not respecting her and her family's legacy and saying I didn't understand what it meant to her. I couldn't help but feel like she was exaggerating things to make me look like the bad guy. A week later, I spoke to my brother, 29M, about what had happened just to get some outside perspective. My brother and I are close, and I trusted his input. When I told him about the conversation with Jessica, he said, "I don't know, man, that sounds a little far-fetched. I mean, I've heard those stories too, but it just doesn't seem likely. A 15-year-old assassin? Come on. Maybe she's holding on to some kind of fantasy about her dad because he's gone." His words made me feel a little better. I wasn't alone in thinking that the story didn't quite add up. But Jessica's reaction kept eating at me. Was I really in the wrong here? Did I dismiss her grief and memories too harshly? Am I the a-hole for not believing her? I tried to talk to her again, but now every conversation about her dad felt like walking on eggshells. She said I was disrespectful, that I didn't understand how much her father meant to her, and that I was invalidating her entire experience with him. At this point, I started to wonder if maybe I was the one who was wrong. I didn't want to tear her down or hurt her feelings, but I couldn't help feeling that there was a deeper issue here, one that went beyond her dad being a secret agent. So, Reddit. Am I the a-hole for telling my wife that I don't believe? Her late dad was trained by the British Secret Service as an assassin at 15 years old. Am I the a-hole for letting my sister hold my baby against our mother's wishes? I, 28F, recently had my first baby, and everything has been going pretty well for the most part. I'm still adjusting to the whole new mom thing, but I've been getting a lot of support from my husband and my family. However, there's one issue that's been causing tension between me and my mom, 50F, and I'm wondering if I've overstepped or if she's being unreasonable. To set the stage, my sister, 32F, and I have always had a complicated relationship. We're not estranged, but we've never been super close, and we tend to have different views on pretty much everything. When I found out I was pregnant, I wasn't sure how she would handle it. She's never been the baby person and has expressed that she doesn't want kids of her own. But surprisingly, when my baby was born, she seemed really excited to meet her niece-nephew. When my mom and sister came to visit the baby at the hospital, my mom immediately started setting boundaries. She has always been a bit overbearing when it comes to family matters, especially when it comes to babies. She's very protective and has always had strong opinions on how babies should be treated. She's the kind of person who believes that babies should only be held by their immediate family, and even then only under very specific circumstances. On the other hand, my sister, who isn't a parent herself, was really eager to hold the baby. She wasn't being obnoxious or pushy about it, but she definitely seemed a little more enthusiastic than I expected. I had no problem with her holding the baby, so I said, "Sure, you can hold her for a few minutes," and handed the baby to my sister. However, my mom immediately started protesting. She said that my sister wasn't prepared enough to hold the baby, and that she needed to be more careful even though my sister has always been gentle and patient. She made some comments about how inexperienced my sister was and how babies need a certain level of care that my sister wasn't ready for. My sister, who has a tendency to be sensitive, looked visibly hurt by my mum's comments, but I told my mom to let it go. I was still in a good place emotionally and wasn't too stressed by the situation. My sister held the baby for a few minutes and everything went fine. My mom, however, was not happy about it and let me know in private that she felt like I was undermining her as the grandparent and making her look bad in front of my sister. She told me that I should have followed her wishes and not let my sister hold the baby, especially since she wasn't a parent and wasn't experienced with handling newborns. She said that I needed to follow her rules, especially since I was the one who invited her to hold the baby in the first place. I don't know why, but my gut instinct was to stand up for my sister and tell my mom that it was my decision, not hers. I told my mom that she needed to respect my decision as the baby's mother and that my sister wasn't doing anything dangerous. My mom then got even more upset, telling me I was being too permissive and that I should have listened to her. She even made a few comments like, "If you can't trust me with your child, who can you trust?" which felt like a guilt trip. This situation has caused a bit of a rift between me and my mom. She's been distant ever since, and she keeps making comments about how I'm letting my sister overstep boundaries. She says that I'm not respecting her experience as a mother, and that by letting my sister hold the baby, I'm creating unnecessary complications in the family dynamic. On the other hand, my sister keeps apologizing to me, saying that she didn't want to cause any tension between me and Mom, but she's also upset about the way Mom treated her. I'm torn because I want to maintain peace in the family, but I also feel like my mom is overstepping her bounds by trying to control who holds my baby. So Reddit, am I the a-hole for letting my sister hold my baby against our mother's wishes? Am I the a-hole for not laughing when my husband joked about my hobby job in front of his boss? I, 29F, have been married to my husband, 30M, for about 5 years, and we have a pretty solid relationship overall. He's always been supportive of me, and I've always been supportive of him. However, we've had this ongoing issue for a while now, and it came to a head during a recent event that's been bothering me. I'm hoping you all can give me some clarity, because I'm feeling a bit conflicted about how I handled it. To give some context, I've always had an interest in art, and a few years ago, I decided to turn that passion into a side job. I work full-time as an office manager, but I also run a small business selling my artwork online. It's not a huge money-making venture, but it's something I really enjoy, and I put a lot of time and effort into it. I've managed to grow it slowly, and I've gained some loyal customers who appreciate my work. It's not a massive income stream, but it allows me to have a creative outlet, and I'm proud of what I've built. Now, my husband has always known how important this side job is to me. I've talked to him about it countless times, and he's never said anything negative about it. However, there have been times when I've sensed that he doesn't fully take it as seriously as I do. He often calls it my hobby job, or refers to it as my little side gig. I've told him before that it's not just a hobby for me. It's something I've put a lot of work into, and have even been able to make some money from, but he tends to brush it off and joke about it in front of friends and family. The real issue came up last week at a dinner with his colleagues. He invited me to join him at a work event to meet some of his co-workers, and I thought it would be a nice evening. When we got there, his boss, who I'd never met before, came over to introduce himself. After some small talk, my husband started talking about me and my hobby job. He said something like, "Yeah, she's got this little side gig where she sells her art online. It's cute, but it's not really a big deal. I think she just does it for fun." I'm sure he was trying to be light-hearted, but it honestly caught me off guard. He said it in front of his boss and his colleagues, and I could tell that they all kind of chuckled, but I felt a bit embarrassed. I don't think he meant to hurt me, but the way he framed it made it sound like what I do doesn't really matter, or is some silly little hobby that I do in my spare time. I didn't laugh. I didn't smile or respond with a joke like I normally would in situations like this. Instead, I just kind of sat there in silence, and I felt this overwhelming sense of frustration. It wasn't the first time he joked about my job, but it was the first time he did it in front of people who didn't really know me or understand the work that goes into what I do. I felt small and like my hard work wasn't being respected. After the dinner, I confronted him about it. I told him that I didn't appreciate how he talked about my job in front of his boss, and I explained that I work hard on it and it's something I take seriously. I told him that calling it a hobby in front of people felt belittling and that I didn't want him to make jokes at my expense anymore. He seemed surprised and said that I was overreacting and that he didn't mean anything by it. He said that it's just a casual way of talking about it and that it wasn't intended to hurt me, but I don't know. It did hurt. I feel like he minimized something that's important to me. I understand that he might see it as just a side thing, but to me it's more than that. It's something I've put a lot of work into, and it's part of who I am, so now I'm wondering, am I the a-hole for not laughing when my husband joked about my hobby job in front of his boss? Was I overreacting or did he cross a line? Am I the a-hole for not taking down my yard flamingos after neighbors complained? Okay, so I 35F need some perspective because I'm honestly torn about this situation. I've always been a pretty fun and light-hearted person, and one of my quirks is that I really enjoy quirky yard decorations. I don't go overboard, but I do like having some fun things in my yard like colorful flamingos, wind chimes, and the occasional gnome. I think it adds character and shows off my personality. About 2 months ago, I bought a few pink flamingo lawn decorations. They're not huge, just regular-sized plastic flamingos, and I thought they were cute. I placed them on my front lawn near the garden and figured they'd be a nice addition to the look of my home. I've had similar decorations in the past, and no one has ever really said anything negative about them. In fact, most people in the neighborhood have always seemed to enjoy them, and they often comment about how they brighten up the block. Fast forward to last week, when I received a letter in the mail from a few of my neighbors. It was signed by about 5 people, and they all expressed concerns about the flamingos. The letter said that they felt the decorations were tacky, out of place, and made the neighborhood look less neat and respectable. They asked that I remove the flamingos because they didn't fit with the aesthetic of the area, which is mostly a mix of traditional landscaping with neatly trimmed bushes, flowers, and a few more classic decorations like bird baths and benches. First, I was honestly kind of taken aback. I thought they were overreacting a bit, but I wanted to be respectful, so I went over to talk to them in person. When I asked one of the neighbors who signed the letter why they were so upset about it, they mentioned that the flamingos were distracting, and they felt like they ruined the overall look of the neighborhood. They said they weren't the only ones bothered by it, and that others felt the same way but didn't want to directly confront me. I tried to explain that they were just something fun I liked, and that I didn't mean to cause any issues. So I even told them that I was happy to discuss it, but that I really didn't think they were such a big deal. However, the conversation got a little tense, and they insisted that the flamingos didn't belong. Some of them even mentioned that if I didn't take them down, it might set a precedent for other people to start putting up inappropriate decorations. I didn't really understand how a couple of flamingos could be considered inappropriate, but I could tell they were really upset. Now here's where things get tricky. I decided not to take down the flamingos. I'm just not ready to give up something that makes me happy, especially when I don't think it's causing any real harm. The way I see it, it's my yard, and I should be able to decorate it however I want. Plus, I've lived in the neighborhood for years, and I've never had issues before, so it feels a bit like an overreaction. I don't want to start a war with my neighbors, but I also don't want to feel like I have to change something I love just because a few people don't like it. Since then, I've received a few more passive-aggressive comments when I run into some of the neighbors on walks. A couple of people have even told me that they think the flamingos are tacky and that they don't fit with the neighborhood vibe. But I still haven't taken them down, and I honestly don't plan to unless it becomes a bigger issue. So Reddit, am I the a-hole for not taking down my yard flamingos after neighbors complained? Am I the a-hole for telling my sister I won't be her maid of honor because she didn't come to my wedding due to her dog dying? Okay, so I'm really conflicted about this situation, and I feel like I need some outside perspective because I'm starting to feel like the bad guy here. I, 30F, recently had my wedding, and it didn't go the way I thought it would because of my sister, who is 27F. I'm having trouble letting go of this issue, and I'm hoping to get advice on whether I'm being unreasonable or not. To give some context, my sister and I have always been pretty close, but we've had our fair share of disagreements over the years. We've always been there for each other, though, and I've always thought that our bond was strong. When I got engaged, I immediately asked her to be my maid of honor, and she was thrilled. We talked about the wedding in detail, and I was really looking forward to having her play such an important role in my big day. Everything was going fine until about a month before the wedding. My sister's dog, who she's had for over 10 years, became very sick. She had mentioned in passing that the dog had been struggling with health issues, but it seemed like nothing too serious at first. Then, as the wedding date got closer, she started becoming more distant. I tried to check in with her, and she mentioned that her dog's health had deteriorated rapidly. She said that she might not be able to make it to the wedding because she couldn't bear to leave her dog while it was so sick. I completely understood that it was a tough situation. I'm an animal lover myself, and I get how important pets are. But at the same time, it was the week before my wedding, and I had already put so much time and effort into planning everything. I was really looking forward to having her by my side as my maid of honor, and I couldn't imagine going through such an important event without her. I tried to be understanding and told her that I hoped she could make it, but if she couldn't, I would still be okay with it. I told her that I would support whatever decision she made, but that I needed her to let me know soon, so I could make alternative plans. The day of my wedding came, and my sister didn't show up. I received a message from her in the morning, telling me she couldn't come because her dog had passed away the night before. She said she was too devastated to leave the house, and that she needed time to grieve. I was devastated for her, I really was. But I also felt incredibly hurt. I had spent months planning the wedding, and I had relied on her to be there for me. I couldn't help but feel like her priorities had shifted, and I felt like I was being left out in the cold on my big day. It was a huge blow, and to be honest, I didn't know how to handle it. After the wedding, I took a little time to process everything, and I eventually reached out to my sister. We had a long conversation, and I let her know how hurt I was by her decision not to come. I told her that, while I understood she was grieving, I felt like she could have made more of an effort to be there for me. I told her that I needed her as my maid of honor, and her absence made me feel like she didn't value our relationship as much as I thought she did. Then came the moment that I've been agonizing over. I told her that, because she didn't show up to my wedding, I didn't feel comfortable being her maid of honor when it was her turn to get married. I explained that I felt like there were boundaries I needed to set, and I didn't want to feel like I was putting my emotional needs second to hers again. I told her that I wouldn't be able to support her in the same way if she couldn't show up for me on such an important day in my life. She was absolutely crushed. She immediately apologized and said that she didn't mean to hurt me, but she needed to grieve the loss of her dog. She said that she thought I would understand, but now she feels like I'm punishing her for something that was beyond her control. She also said that I was being unfair by holding this against her when she was going through something so personal. She asked me how I could not understand that the loss of her dog was just as important as my wedding. Now, I'm left wondering if I was too harsh. I don't want to feel like the bad guy, but I also feel like I had every right to expect her to be there for me. We're talking about my wedding day, the one time in my life that I'd imagined her standing by me as my maid of honor. I feel like she let me down, and I don't know if I can just overlook that. So Reddit, am I the a-hole for telling my sister I won't be her maid of honor because she didn't come to my wedding due to her dog dying?